Solar for Beginners, or Solar 101, 2021 edition. This video will tell you everything you need to know about solar before you go and get quotes. My name's Finn Peacock, and I founded the website Solar Quotes 12 years ago. This video is the distillation of everything I've learned about solar over that decade and a bit. So let's get started. The first thing you need to know is there are four main parts to a solar system. Number one is the panels. Solar panels are simply a collection of 60 or more solar cells. Panels can use different cell types and different cell arrangements. For cell type, you can buy either monocrystalline or polycrystalline. The difference in performance between a mono and a poly panel of a similar wattage is absolutely marginal, so don't feel any pressure to get one over the other. For cell arrangement, you can choose standard, which looks like this, or you can have half cut, which doesn't mean they're on the piss, it means they're cut in half and look like this. Finally, you can get shingled, where the cells are slightly overlapping like this. There are some benefits to using half-cut or shingle panels over standard ones if you have shade which creeps up on the panels through the day. Otherwise, don't stress. Any cell arrangement will work well. Panel manufacturers generally make solar panels in two major sizes. 60 cell residential size, which is about 1 by 1.65 meters, and 72 cell commercial size, which are about 1 meter by 2 meters. And if the panels are half cut, you get twice as many cells because the cells are chopped in half. Hi-ya! Although it's not a karate chop, it's with a laser. Commercial sized 72 cell panels are bigger and heavier and pump out more watts than residential sized 60 cell panels. And it's becoming more common for companies to quote residential households on commercial sized panels to squeeze more power out of fewer panels on the roof. The downside is that it's much harder to get the clamping zones right for commercial panels. And if those clamps are not in the correct place, you compromise the longevity of the panels because they can flex too much. Don't use commercial panels on small residential roofs. You are asking for trouble. It really doesn't matter if you get mono, poly, regular, half-cut, shingled, and if your roof's big enough, residential-sized or commercial-sized panels. What matters most is that you get a good brand that is well supported in Australia. Now, you probably don't know a good panel brand from a lemon, and why should you? So, here's a handy chart of all the brands I consider to be good quality and well supported in Australia. This list is not exhaustive, so if you're not sure about a brand, shoot me an email, but this chart represents probably 95% of what's being quoted in Australia right now, and are brands I consider a safe bet. I could list all the brands I believe to be crap, but my lawyers are busy enough. So unless you're an industry expert, I'd just strongly advise to sticking to the brands on the chart. To get an idea of what buying premium panels will do to your budget, going for a high-end brand like LG over a budget-end brand like LONGi can add about 30% to the system cost. The difference in performance between a budget brand like Jinko and a premium brand like SunPower is fairly marginal. The main difference between the two is how much output they guarantee after 25 years on your roof, as well as the length of their product warranty. For example, 370 watt Jinko panels are warranted to have 83.1% of their rated output after 25 years, and they have a product warranty of 12 years. Top of the range 400 watt SunPower Maxion solar panels, on the other hand, are warranted to have 92% of their rated output after 25 years. And they have a full 25-year product warranty. But the SunPower Maxion costs more than double what a Jinko does. Is that slower performance degradation and longer product warranty worth it? That's a decision for you to make. The second important part of a solar power system is the inverter, which can be either a string inverter around the size of a small briefcase or microinverters, which are about the size of a paperback book. A string inverter is installed on the wall, and all the solar panels connect into it. A microinverter goes on the back of each solar panel. Now, there's also a third option, power optimizers, and they're kind of a hybrid between the two because an optimizer system has both a string inverter on the wall and optimizers on the back of each panel. If you've got a short attention span, here's my hot take. Microinverters and optimizer-based systems are more expensive than simple string inverters, but they have a variety of benefits that make them worth considering, especially if you have a shaded roof. Now, if you do go with a string inverter which sits on the wall, make sure that the wall it's mounted on does not get direct sunlight. Choose a shaded spot, a cool garage, or ask your installer to put a simple shade over the inverter. This is because direct, intense Aussie sunlight shortens the lifespan of inverters. It cooks them like a Christmas turkey. The job of the inverter is to convert the steady DC electricity solar panels make into oscillating 230 volts AC electricity, which is what your home uses. The inverter is the component most likely to fail in a solar power system in the first 10 to 15 years. This is because they work really hard all day and they do wear out. So, even if you're on a limited budget, I'd recommend considering a mid or high-end inverter, as I'm confident they'll last longer overall than the cheapest ones. And if your inverter fails, that will bring down your whole system unless you're using microinverters. Here's a rundown of the inverter brands available in Australia that I believe to be good quality and well supported. Again, this list is not exhaustive, but any reputable installer has about a 90% chance of quoting you one of these brands. Upgrading from a budget inverter like a GoodWe to a premium inverter like a Fronius will add around $1,000 to the cost of a residential system. Going for optimizers or microinverters can add an extra $1 to $2 grand on top of that. The third main component of a solar power installation is the racking. This is what your solar panels are mounted on and what connects them securely to your roof. There are a wide variety of racking brands out there, and at the end of the day, racking is just aluminium bolted together. So, most brands are much of a muchness, except for premium brands like Radiant, which give more adjustability and flexibility in the design of the system, and they may corrode less over decades. This chart shows brands that we're familiar with and where they sit on price. The difference between a budget end brand and a premium end brand is about $100 per kilowatt of solar panels installed. The fourth main component, which not many people talk about, is the consumption monitor. This is a small box that sits in your switchboard, and it measures how much electricity is coming from or going to the grid. To be clear, you can absolutely install a solar system without this device, and it will work, but I strongly recommend getting one. Here's why. Without a consumption monitor, although your inverter will be able to tell you how much solar is being generated at any point in time, you'll be blind to how much solar is being used by your house. Now, I could make a whole other video on why you need this information, but for now, let me just say, for about $500, a consumption monitor will allow you to understand exactly how your solar system is working and the best way to manage your energy for maximum savings. For me personally, it's worth every dollar. The second thing you need to understand is how solar is used by your home. The easiest way to explain this is to show animations from my home's Tesla monitoring app. You can see that in this snapshot in time, my solar system is producing 4.4 kilowatts. 0.9 kilowatts is going into my home, with the surplus 3.5 simply going into the grid. I'm paid a feed-in tariff by my retailer for each kilowatt hour of energy that I export. Here in SA, at the time of filming, I'm getting 14 cents per kilowatt hour of solar energy exported. Now, let's look at a situation where my home is drawing more power than my solar system can supply. You can see that my home needs 2.1 kilowatts of power, while my solar is only generating 1.8 kilowatts. So the grid simply tops up my home with the extra 0.3 kilowatts required. The third thing you need to know is how many panels to buy. My advice on this has changed considerably in the last few years. Now, in my opinion, the only limitations should be your budget, what your roof can fit, the amount your DNSP, that's your distributed network service provider, your local electricity network, allows you to install. For most homes, the absolute minimum you should consider is 6.6 kilowatts of panels. That's about 18 panels with a 5 kilowatt inverter. Because you're highly likely to add an electric car and a battery to your home within the next 5 years, you should seriously consider going even larger than this if you can. I don't think I've ever heard someone complain that they put too much solar on, but I do all the time hear from people that wish they'd bought more solar panels because it's expensive and complicated to add panels to an existing system after the fact. The fourth thing you need to know about are solar rebates. The famous Australian federal solar rebate, technically known as the STC scheme, acts as a point of sale discount off the final cost of a solar installation. Now, all the prices you see advertised will already include this discount. The rebate is worth about $550 per kilowatt of solar panels installed, but this will vary slightly depending on where you live. So, for example, a 6.6 kilowatt system attracts around $3,630 in rebates. Anyone can claim the rebate, even if you've already bought solar. The only restrictions on claiming the rebate are: 1, your system must be less than 100 kilowatts, and that's bloody huge. 2, you get it installed and designed by a Clean Energy Council accredited professional. 3, you use panels and inverters that are approved for use in Australia by the Clean Energy Council. And you need to know that the federal solar rebate is slowly being phased out. It'll reduce by about 1/9 of today's value every January until it goes to zero in 2031. So it does reduce every year, but not by much. Don't get sucked in by a slimy salesman claiming you need to get in quick before the rebate massively reduces. If you live in Victoria, you may be eligible for the Victorian solar rebate too. At the time of filming, that's worth $1,850, but it is means tested and you can only claim it if you don't already have solar. The fifth thing you need to know is the difference between the solar rebate and the solar feed-in tariff. I mentioned earlier that the solar feed-in tariff is how much you're paid for the solar electricity you export into the grid. Between 2009 and 2012, people signed up to really generous feed-in tariffs. It paid them anywhere between 30 cents a kilowatt hour and 66 cents a kilowatt hour. These generous tariffs were designed to kickstart the solar industry when solar systems were much more expensive. Solar systems have reduced in price by over 80% since 2008, and feed-in tariffs have reduced too, to around 3 to 20 cents, depending on your electricity retailer and where you are in Australia. This reduction in feed-in tariffs is why you sometimes see people running around screaming, "Solar isn't worth it anymore, the rebate's been massively reduced." They're confusing the rebate with the feed-in tariff. The federal rebate is still alive and kicking, and it isn't being reduced significantly anytime soon. We've run the numbers, and even if you can only get a lower feed-in tariff, for many households, it's still realistic to expect a 5-year payback on your solar system. The sixth thing you need to know are the basics of roof direction and angle for optimal solar generation. First, let's discuss panel direction. North-facing solar panels will peak in their power production around midday and give you the most energy overall throughout the year. East-facing panels will boost morning production, but give less overall and in the afternoon. That works out to about 15% less energy throughout the year. West-facing panels will boost production in the late afternoon, but give less overall morning production, again, working out to about 15% less energy annually. But this means a working household can self-consume more solar energy with both east and west-facing panels because they give more energy before and after school or work. This can often increase your savings despite delivering slightly less energy overall. Sadly, I've spoken to more than one homeowner with a big east or west roof, perfect for solar, that thinks it's just not worth it because their panels can't face north. It used to be true maybe 12 years ago that if you couldn't install panels on a north-facing roof, then solar wasn't worth it. But now the price of solar has dropped so much, you can get a fantastic return on your investment from east-facing panels, west-facing panels, or a combination of north, east, and west. Hell, despite what many well-meaning installers might claim, you can even make really good money with south-facing solar panels. Personally, I'm about to install panels on my south-facing roof because I've got a battery and 2 electric cars, and I need as much generation as possible to fill them up. Now let's discuss panel angle. The ideal panel angle to maximize the energy produced over the whole year is simply within a few degrees of the latitude of your location. Here's a chart showing the latitude of each capital city. So for my house in Adelaide, the perfect solar panel angle is about 35 degrees from horizontal. If you're not able to install your panels at the perfect angle, don't worry. The panels in my own installation are at 15 degrees from horizontal, and I only lose about 4% in annual energy production compared to the perfect angle. So generally, unless your roof is flat, the ideal angle to mount your solar panels at is whatever angle the roof's been built at. If your roof is flat, you can still install the panels, but you need to be aware that you'll lose about 10% of your total annual generation compared to the ideal angle. And more importantly, you'll need to pay someone to clean them frequently, probably 3 to 4 times a year, as you need at least 10 degrees tilt for rain to reliably run off the panels and clean them. So if your roof is flat, I strongly recommend using tilt frames to avoid lost generation and the hassle of cleaning them. The 7th thing you need to know is how a solar system's savings and payback are calculated. This depends on a few key things. The output of your system, which when annualized is very consistent. Your self-consumption ratio, which is the amount of solar you use in the home versus what you export to the grid. Your feed-in tariff, which, as already mentioned, varies from retailer to retailer and state to state. Your usage tariff, which is what you pay for grid electricity. Putting it all together, the main way solar saves you money is by offsetting your grid usage. If you pay 36 cents per kilowatt hour, like I do in Adelaide, and your solar system generates 1 kilowatt hour to offset that, you've just saved 36 cents. But if your solar system generates 1 kilowatt hour and sends that to the grid, because it's not needed in your home, the value of that exported solar is less. Here are some payback calculation examples taken from my solar calculator, which I link to in the description. It's for all the major capital cities in Australia, and I use sensible defaults for usage, feed-in tariff, and self-consumption ratio. At home personally, I have 6 kilowatts of solar, a battery, and 2 electric cars. On my most recent winter bill, my self-consumption was a staggering 90%. My solar system is printing money. I'll finish this section by saying, avoid any solar company that only calculates your solar system savings based on 100% self-consumption. Crazy high self-consumption, like mine, is still very rare. Make sure you see the savings for multiple, more realistic scenarios, like 20% and 50% self-consumption, depending on the system size and what appliances you run. The 8th thing you need to know is what price ranges you can expect to pay for quality solar and why quotes can vary wildly in price. At the time of filming, December 2020, approximate prices for good quality solar systems in Australia, that's panels and inverters from my trusted charts, including full installation, are shown on the screen now. Note that installing batteries will at least double the price of the system. I'll put a link in the video description that will show you the most up-to-date prices. Now, to be clear, the upper end of these price ranges are for top-end systems. You're probably talking LG or SunPower panels with full panel level optimization or microinverters installed by a solar craftsman. Also note that these prices include the discount from the federal solar rebate. However, for those of you in Victoria, these prices do not include the state level rebate offered by the Victorian government. If you want to downgrade to a reputable budget inverter, that would be the brands on the left-hand side of the inverter chart I showed you earlier, you may be able to save around $800 on the lower end of those price ranges. Costs can increase if you need an electricity switchboard upgrade or any other electrical work that makes your home safe and suitable for solar power, or if the design of your home makes a system installation really difficult. Take my house, for example. It's made of straw, seriously. It was a pain in the ass to install solar on. Now, really cheap solar energy systems, ones cheaper than the prices I mentioned, can very well cost you more in the long run from repairs, lost output, and just the general emotional frustration of dealing with a company that is unlikely to return your calls. I tell my friends to avoid these systems. It breaks my heart to see solar panels going into landfill after only 3 to 5 years on a roof. The 9th thing you need to know is whether batteries are worth it. To use an example, one of the most famous batteries in the world, the Tesla Powerwall. This costs around $16,000 installed without a subsidy and will save you, pretty much best case, $1,000 a year. That means you're looking at least 16 years before you've broken even on your initial investment, let alone profited from it. And it's anyone's guess as to how long the Powerwall will last past its 10-year warranty. Now, you don't need a Nobel Prize in economics to realize that with those numbers, unsubsidized batteries generally won't pay for themselves at current prices. But I'll be the first to tell you that there's lots of reasons to buy a battery. Money isn't everything, I get it. I bought a battery because I'm a tech geek and I love to play with the latest technology. And as someone the media regularly asks about these things, I thought I should at least own a battery if I'm going to talk about them. But for the vast majority of homeowners, saving money is their number one priority. And who can blame them? One day, batteries will make lots of sense financially. And when that day comes, they can easily be added to any existing solar system. You use a method called AC coupling. Now, just a note about state-level battery rebates, as well as virtual power plants, or VPPs. In Victoria, South Australia, and the ACT, there are state government battery subsidies that can take 30% or more off the total cost of buying a battery. If you get a really good deal on a battery, these additional rebates can take them from being too expensive to worth considering. One way to get a good deal on a battery is through what's known as a virtual power plant, VPP. In a nutshell, they usually offer an upfront discount on the cost of a battery, plus a premium feed-in tariff for some of the battery energy discharged into the grid. The quid pro quo is that you must surrender control of your battery to the VPP operator. When it comes to VPPs, I'm yet to be convinced that the huge savings promised will actually be the norm for most households that sign up to one. After all, most VPPs are operated by energy retailers, and as we know, many of them have a long history of screwing their electricity customers. The 10th thing you need to know is all about how to finance your solar system. Now, most Australians actually buy solar power systems with cash. If you're debt-free and have cash looking for a place to go, then investing in a solar system is worth serious consideration. A residential solar installation currently generates a tax-free, reliable return that at the time of filming is far higher than bank interest rates or government bonds. However, some of us don't have the luxury of easy access to thousands of dollars. Many solar installers offer no interest finance. And if that sounds too good to be true, it's because it almost certainly is. If you see a deal that claims no interest, your BS detector should be going off. All finance has a cost. The no interest deals often charge the installer a fee of 20 to 25% on top of the cash price. And guess what? That cost is passed on to you. Now, don't misunderstand me. Plenty of reputable solar installers, not just the shonky ones, offer no interest finance because many customers demand it these days. But in my experience, you can get a much better deal by shopping around for a low interest finance provider and avoiding the easy sign up, no interest deals. The 11th and final thing you need to know is a bit forward looking, but it's still really important. It's about remote inverter shutdowns. Here in South Australia, it's been a requirement since October 2020 to enable remote shutdown of all new systems sold in the event of extreme grid circumstances. And that requirement is likely to roll out nationally at some point. So, the local electricity network in SA, and soon, I'm guessing, networks across Australia, will have a big red button, boom, that can shut down all recently installed solar systems. Sounds a bit scary, right? Many people believe this means the government is going to shut down your solar whenever they like, and that solar is now no longer worth it as a result. There are all sorts of conspiracy theories going around about this. All I'll say is this: speaking as a chartered electrical engineer who understands how hard it is to maintain a national electricity grid, the SA government has legitimate concerns about the stability of the grid, and that's led them to propose and enact this legislation. I'd be really surprised if such remote shutdowns happen more than 2 to 3 times a year, for more than a few hours at a time. Meaning, the cost to you of such shutdowns is only likely to be $10, maximum $20 per year, I'm guessing. So don't stress about scary sounding remote shutdowns. Be glad that we're taking steps to address how to integrate so much renewable energy with the electricity grid. It's a wonderful thing that solar is now so abundant that on very rare occasions we have too much. It means that for the rest of the year we have heaps of clean energy running through the grid, which is something we should all be really proud of. So there you have it, the 2021 edition of my Solar 101 guide. You now have all the knowledge you need to buy a good quality solar system with confidence. The safest way I know to buy solar is to get quotes for comparison from reputable, pre-vetted installers, which is exactly what my website Solar Quotes can do for you. Just visit solarquotes.com.au, pop your postcode into the top right box, hit the big red button, and I'll do my absolute best to match you with up to 3 pre-vetted installers who can give you quotes for high quality systems. Thanks for watching.